Just as much as there is a horror movie for every occasion, there's also a horror movie for every location. Yes, horror movies aren't all haunted houses and creepy graveyards. Sometimes they favor somewhere much closer to home. Hospitals are pretty unique places already. As human beings, we respect the medical professionals within them, but hope to not find ourselves in one. Horror raining havoc upon a hospital setting just seems to add that extra little smidge of primal fear to a movie. So without further ado, I'm Jess from What Culture, and here are creepy horror movies set in a hospital. Number 9. The Ward, 2010. The Ward follows Amber Heard's Kristen, a young amnesiac woman who's sent to a psychiatric facility after committing an act of arson. Here she meets the other all-female patients and begins experiencing haunting visions of a ghostly former patient named Alice. John Carpenter's first feature film in almost a decade opened to poor box office and middling reviews. Most felt that the picture was formulaic and didn't match the filmmaker's previous brilliance. While it may be true that The Ward is a little rough around the edges, it shouldn't be dismissed as just another boo-scary ghost movie. Looking deeper, one can appreciate The Ward for its ending reveal and the message it delivers about past trauma and the mind's willingness to bury it with fanciful creations. The film exists in the same realm as 2003's Identity or the fantastic Buffy episode Normal Again. If one can appreciate The Ward for what it attempts and the message it holds, it certainly seems like a stronger offering from Carpenter. A stronger script would have helped The Ward along, but that doesn't take away from the excellent performances, the great 1960s setting, and the hints that are decidedly and excellently Carpenter. There are worse ways to spend 90 minutes. Number 8. The Void, 2016. This surreal and ambitious indie flick follows a group of locals as they're surrounded by a mysterious cult at a rural hospital. If that plot description sounds ever so slightly vague, that's because describing the void in any number of words is almost impossible. This little-seen sci-fi infused supernatural tale is truly something the viewer has to witness for themselves. Although the plot is slightly muddled and perhaps a little overly ambitious for the 90-minute runtime, The Void deserves serious props for what the film manages to achieve in both stunning makeup effects and an absolutely otherworldly atmosphere. The excellent makeup effects are truly on display here, as there's body horrors aplenty for our unsuspecting little group. As characters fall victim to and subsequently become unsettling many tentacled beings, we can't help but marvel at the spectacle and ask just what exactly is going on. The Void is comparable to the works of David Lynch, H.P. Lovecraft, and David Cronenberg, as it tries a little bit of everything. With a plot that's never fully explained and some truly horrifying visuals, while The Void would have benefited from a lot more narrative cohesion, there's no denying that it's a fascinating watch. Number 7. Don't Look in the Basement, 1973. A young nurse is excited to begin her tenure at a private and experimental psychiatric clinic. However, the doctor in charge doesn't seem to want her there, and soon the patients begin to meet grisly ends. Don't Look in the Basement is the debut horror feature from cult director S.F. Brownrigg. In later years, he'd produced a slew of similar movies with Texas-based actors and crew members exclusively. Basement is certainly the roughest of his offerings, but it's still an intriguing watch. Here we have an interesting and somewhat disturbing time capsule of a movie that's from a time where mental illnesses were not taken as seriously. As a result, some of the depictions of these illnesses come off as really stereotyped and overblown, so it can be a little offensive. The movie also makes an attempt at a slasher movie twist ending, this being quite effective as said twist is masked surprisingly well throughout this oddball ride and is genuinely unexpected. However, the script, cheesy effects, and clunky performances can make the film seem like a chore at times. Brownrigg would almost certainly improve with time and experience, but the movie's still a really interesting watch for a time where well-being was not as well understood. Number 6. In Dreams, 1999. Iconic director Neil Jordan continues his exploration of psychosis and trauma in what may be his most underrated film. In Dreams stars Annette Bening as a woman with a psychic connection to an active serial killer. When the killer murders her daughter, she's driven into a world of mental instability, but must stop him before he can take another life. In Dreams is a tour de force of incredible performances, coupled with stunning, haunting imagery. Annette Bening's Claire Cooper is a woman written off as a grief-stricken loon and locked away. But as an audience, we will all those around her to listen. Without a doubt, In Dreams' crowning sequence comes when Claire decides to escape the hospital and uses her visions of our villain's past to guide her out. She mimics his movements from years before to disguise herself as a nurse and seduce a naive security guard. The whisper-quiet hospital makes for an unbearably tense setting, as we fear either character may be caught out at any second. and the purposefully muted color palette makes the nurse's white uniform and shocking red lipstick incredibly striking. In Dreams is a masterfully made psychological drama, and it deserves way more attention and praise than it's received in the 2 decades since its release. Number 5. X-Ray, aka Hospital Massacre, 1982. 1982's X-Ray takes us to an expansive Los Angeles hospital where Susan Jeremy arrives for a routine checkup. Unbeknownst to her, someone with sinister intentions lurks inside, someone who's still feeling spurned that she didn't accept their Valentine invite years prior. As with so many other location-centric slasher movies, there was a brief trend of blood being spilled over hospital hallways in the genre, visiting hours, and another movie that may appear later being the most notable. X-Ray is the hospital slasher that nobody seems to remember, and it's a real shame because there's a good chance it's the goriest and most fun in the bunch. Here we have a killer whose rage is palpable as he uses a buzzsaw, acid, and an axe to carve his way to his intended victim. The movie's also permeated by a wonderfully bizarre atmosphere, as there constantly seems to be something off about the rambling hospital and its staff. As an audience, we relate to actress Barbie Benton's discomfort as she's left in the dark about why the staff refuse to let her leave. Great visuals and quirky side characters also ensure X-Ray is never a dull watch. One eerie scene in particular shows the killer silhouetted behind a sheet chasing a victim down a hallway. Do yourself a favor and seek this gem out. Number 4. Ginger Snaps, Unleashed, 2004. 2004's Ginger Snaps Unleashed follows Emily Perkins' Bridget as she's confined to a drug treatment center. The formula she needs to prevent her transformation into a werewolf is confiscated, and a hungry beast prowls the surrounding woods intent on mating with her. Unleashed is quite the ballsy and interesting little film, as it dares to tell its story despite having killed the titular sister in the previous entry. It's a credit to actress Emily Perkins and her talent as an actress that the story focus shifting to Bridget works. Feeling much more bleak than the previous entry, Ginger Snaps Unleashed draws us in with some charismatic supporting characters, in particular Tatiana Maslany as the wonderfully eccentric ghost. The hospital keeps the werewolf action to a minimum for the majority of the film, but it's Perkins' heartbreaking and incredible performance that keeps us enthralled. Although the sequence of her body transformation comes to life in its 3rd act, with werewolf fights and bites aplenty, it lacks the atmosphere and the sense of claustrophobia the eerie old hospital provided. Unleashed takes the previous film's metaphor of lycanthropy representing puberty and instead masterfully spins it into a metaphor for drug dependence and its consequences. Number 3. Patrick, 1978. Patrick follows Patrick, a catatonic young man that's taken a liking to a nurse and uses his telekinetic powers to get to her. What is it with horror movies set in hospitals just being so strange? Patrick is the very definition of Ozploitation, a term that was used to blanket the large number of oddball thriller and horror pictures coming from Australia in the late 70s. Australia's answer to Hitchcock, Richard Franklin helms this bizarre tale and manages to keep a hold on a plot that is sometimes comedic. With lots of strobing light effects, an eerie ambient score, and jarringly unsettling cinematography, Franklin gives a sense of class to a low-budget flick that is not particularly well written. I have to agree with the author of this list that Australians are known for their often unique sense of humour, so perhaps some of these scenes are intended to elicit a giggle. For example, in one wonderfully bizarre scene, the catatonic Patrick attempts to impress his nurse by showing her he still has the ability to spit and get an erection. I kid you not. It's thanks to Franklin's direction that a lot of these scenes actually work, as they're played razor straight. It's no doubt with the talent he showed in this film why he ended up working on Psycho 2. Number 2. Halloween 2, 1981. You knew it was coming, perhaps one of the best sequels in all of horror movie history, and certainly one of the best to make use of a hospital setting. Halloween 2 picks up seconds after the previous film's conclusion, and follows Laurie Strode as she's taken to hospital after her night of terror. The wounded Michael Myers is on her tail and prowling the long corridors. Upon writing Halloween 2, John Carpenter knew he wanted it to continue the very same night, but quickly realized there was little more that could be done with the story. Instead, he opted to move the location of the action from suburban streets to the town hospital. The change in setting means we have a villain that is at his most menacing here. The hospital locale opens up a whole plethora of new weapons for Michael Myers to use, and he lives up to his moniker of the Shape as he artfully blends into the darkened corridors and vacant rooms. It is this ever-present threat that keeps Halloween 2 interesting, as Myers picks off a much larger cast, and means that faults like an underused Jamie Lee Curtis can be forgiven. However, despite standing tall as a solidly crafted gore fest, Halloween 2 would introduce plot elements that would change the franchise for decades to come. Number 1. Session 9, 2001. Was there ever any question that this atmospheric psychological masterpiece would top this hospital-centric list? Session 9 introduces us to an asbestos cleaning crew dispatched to clean up an abandoned asylum. As time goes on, the crew begins to fracture as they uncover the building's dark past. Are there ghosts at work, or is it something much more human? Season 9 is just a masterful exercise in psychological games and the complexities of the human mind. The movie asks us in so many subtle and not so subtle sequences just how much one person can take before they break. Whether you choose to look at this haunting piece of cinema as the standard haunted building fodder or see it as something deeper, what cannot be denied is the overall eeriness of the entire picture. Location filming in an actual abandoned asylum lends so much here and makes us feel much more a part of the events. After all, we all fear vast dark spaces where anything could lurk, don't we? Upon its conclusion, Session 9 remains with the viewer. Be it the terrifying visuals, the haunting voices on those long-forgotten tapes, or the movie pointing out just how fragile the human psyche is. There is a fear and discomfort to this hospital-set horror that truly cuts deep.